Welcome, low ego action heroes. Oh, looks like my microphone's a little low. Let's turn that up. Hello, I'm back in my home office, so I'm trying to adjust all of my equipment. But welcome to episode 236. Today's free webinar is going to be about when don't you want an MVP? Because there are many times where it is not the right way to go. And we're going to read an article about some of those examples and then open it up for discussion and questions. Hi, I'm Debbie Levitt, and you can check out our other events coming up at cxcc.to/events. Please subscribe here to the YouTube channel. Give us some thumbs up and some comments. Hello, Ana Lucia. And please also join our Patreon. We've got a Patreon going with hundreds of members, and you can join for free, which is absolutely totally fine. I'm not judging anybody. Money's tight for a lot of people right now, including me. And then we've got paid members who I am very grateful for their support. And of course, you get a little bit more if you are a paid member. So I hope you will check it out and join at patreon.com/CXCC. So as I read this article, please, ask your questions, make your comments, agree, disagree, totally up to you. Everything's welcome. So let's go into screen sharing mode. And let's see, hopefully, yes. Okay, so, oh, you're not seeing the chat room. Let's get the chat room superimposed. There we go. So this is an article that you can find on Medium, and just look for "When Wouldn't You Want a Fast MVP?" and probably my name, and then it'll come up. This is from April 2024. I'm talking to you in May 2024. Here we go. During a LinkedIn back and forth under a product manager's post about the origins of Spotify, I had said that part of their early success was that they didn't go for an MVP. They didn't use a just ship it and fail fast approach. The original post indicated that it took Spotify roughly 2 years to launch, and I suggested that taking that time on their product was part of their success. Someone asked me why I felt they shouldn't have done an MVP or aimed for a fast launch. Let's start with the definition of an MVP according to Wikipedia. Quote, "A minimum viable product, MVP, is a version of a product with just enough features to be usable by early customers who can then provide feedback for future product development. A focus on releasing an MVP means that developers potentially avoid lengthy and possibly unnecessary work. A minimum viable product has just enough core features to effectively deploy the product and no more. Developers typically deploy the product to a subset of possible customers, such as early adopters who are thought to be more forgiving, more likely to give feedback, and able to grasp a product vision from an early prototype or marketing information. This strategy aims to avoid building products that customers do not want and seeks to maximize information about the customer with the least money spent." End quote. Then I've got an image on the screen, which is what Spotify looked like in 2007 when they were still in beta and their homepage was a waiting list for their product. So Spotify was created in 2006 and didn't launch until 2008. So now let's talk about why and when you might not want to go the MVP route and what you would do instead. First, we have to ask ourselves, how mature is the market? Should you build something that is not yet feature rich or could be quite minimal just to get it out fast? Most people would probably advise that route for a startup or the new venture of an existing company. Despite dizzyingly high product launch failure rates, experiment failure rates, and startup failure rates, people continue to recommend the same old books and methods producing these failures. But if you are joining a market where there is one or more key player with noticeable market share and or longevity, an MVP is not recommended. If you're entering a market where there are expectations about required functionality, an MVP won't be enough to meet or exceed those expectations. Imagine an MVP for a music player or streaming service in 2024. Which common features, expected by most users, would you leave out so that you could be fast and push out an MVP? In order to be fast and follow an MVP approach, would your music service lack creating, editing, or using playlists, a smartphone app, marking a song as one you like or dislike, marking a band or artist as a favorite, sharing a song to someone outside the system, adjusting the sound quality or the equalizer, recommending music based on other music you listen to, downloading music to listen to it offline? If you are going toward or truly minimally viable, then you would have to build a product with the least features you believe you can get away with to just launch. But imagine you're entering a mature market, especially where there are some big players. In this example, we have Spotify with 30% of market share, iTunes from Apple, YouTube Music from Google, Tidal, which some consider a failure, and others. Back in 2006 to 2008, Spotify's competitors would have included iTunes, Rhapsody, Napster, Winamp, Real Player, and others. It was an already crowded market with a lot of choices. If you believe that you can create the better music system, are you likely to get the adoption and retention you want if you don't have at least the most common features that all of these already have? Feature parity with existing competitors would not be an MVP. There's nothing minimally viable about spending time to build some or all of the features in the above list. It might be your beta or your version 1, but it wouldn't be an MVP by definition. There are many stops along a very long road before you have strategized, designed, and made decisions around each feature or function that would position your music system as a strong new competitor. And that's the question. Are you trying to be a strong new competitor, or are you trying to create the fastest thing you can? Remember what Engadget said about the AI pin that's making the news here in April 2024? Quote, if your product is meant to be smart and revolutionary, it should at least be able to do what its competitors already can, not to mention offer features they don't. How do you enter a market that already has serious players? No pun intended. It depends upon the market, the users, the competition, and what problems you're trying to solve. Have you done generative qualitative research to learn what would make users walk away from every other music service, join yours, and stay with it? An MVP, beta, or new launch can always find curious users who will give it a try. That can seem like the adoption metric you're looking for, but is it true adoption? Will the users giving it a try continue using it? Will they leave their current choice and use yours? You are unlikely to truly attract, satisfy, or retain a dedicated user base with an MVP in a mature market. This is part of why co founders love to tell you about their adoption numbers, but are less likely to talk about their churn or retention problems. Or you might hear that their churn rate is normal, so it's probably fine. Hint, it's not fine. People leaving you, especially early in their relationship with you, needs to be fixed, no matter what the average churn rate is. The only retention rate that matters is yours. Customers and users rarely, if ever, want the least you could create. They rarely want the least features, the least thought, or the least iteration before it was placed in their lives. They might adopt and check it out, but they're unlikely to stay with something that doesn't fit their needs. What do trial users expect? What do paying customers expect? It might be a lot more than an MVP. Releasing an MVP to target audiences who need more than an MVP is risky. Have qualified researchers do early generative, behavioral, and task research to understand what users need and expect. Don't guess or hypothesize. Don't assume that everybody will jump for your good idea. High experiment, product, and startup failures remind us that customers are picky and have standards. Meet or exceed those standards. P should be for prototype. We never got the rewrite of the Lean Startup book that we really needed. The original author should have looked back on which advice worked and which generally didn't, which details and how to's were missing. We never got an iteration of a book about iterating. A truly minimum viable product is a prototype, a usable and testable model, something the public hasn't seen yet. We don't know if we're going in the right direction. It might be something we're still designing and need to test to make sure we're solving the right problems and solving them well. We don't have to publicly release a product or prototype to get feedback. Checking how our design and idea solve a known, real problem is core to the human centered design process. You can create a realistic UX prototype, especially using a tool like Axure, where you can create a digital experience that is extremely realistic. You can fill in form fields, you can swipe or drag, and you can manipulate realistic data. The more realistic your prototype is, the better feedback you will get because testing participants will be able to try common tasks the way they do normally. Your goal with an MVP is to get early feedback to make sure you're going in the right direction. That's part of what UX prototypes are for. Your MVP is a prototype that you test and iterate out of the public eye. Another disadvantage of the MVP is that it's normally a public release. This means that you have shown your hand of cards. Competitors big and small will now see what you've been working on. People can screenshot it, post to social media, and write reviews. If your product is not ready for what is immediately the world stage, you can hurt your reputation quickly and sometimes permanently. I think about a launch like Vero. Of course, you don't remember them. Before the pandemic, they were trying to be a new social media system. They got so much wrong so early that if you Google them, you will find many articles about their failure. They had usability issues, server problems, controversial founders, and then deceptive design when it came to trying to delete your account. The public was unforgiving. The media was unforgiving. Mashable said Vero sucked and called it hot trash, using a gravestone as their article's main image. Fast Company called it bad and focused the article on the previous shady business dealings of the founders. Releasing an MVP too fast, too early, or too M for minimal can lead to failures from which you might not rebound. There are companies and startups who release something broken that they assume they'll fix later, and they don't really get the chance because instead of being considered a starting point, it's considered dead. A famous quote says that you never get a second chance to make a first impression, but it leaves out that even if you get a chance to make a second impression, the ghost of the first impression might haunt you forever. Okay, that was the article. Let's take a look at our comment from Ana Lucia. Thank you for your comment. Ana Lucia is talking about the Wikipedia definition of MVP, and she says, potentially avoid lengthy and possibly unnecessary work. So, do your research before development? Seems to be rocket science for some. Yeah, for some, the MVP is more about testing and validation than the early generative research that we're typically recommending here on this channel. We're talking about starting with research, and then bringing back research later when we get into testing, usability, evaluation, validating and invalidating, finding room for improvement. So again, people who tend to be hypothesis first, which we've already talked about here on the channel, you can go to our YouTube channel and find that webinar, tend to feel like, well, look, just come up with your idea, design it, and test it. But you're missing so much other early work that would help us learn before we start building and testing what might be a very bad idea or very flawed or not a match for our target audiences. So with that, I'm going to check if there's any questions on LinkedIn. LinkedIn tends to be quiet, but I'd like to hear from you too. Any questions or comments that you put on will come up here on the screen. Yep, I see a few people are watching LinkedIn. So if you have any questions, comments, agreements, or disagreements, add them now. Otherwise, we're going to be winding up our webinar. I will take a quick look at the calendar to remind people what else is coming and what they can expect. And don't forget that my space workshop is coming up in September. If you haven't taken it yet, you can check it out at cxcc.to/space. Ana Lucia says, I'm not totally against MVPs, but doing one after doing actual research would be more in tune with reality, further away from the fail fast mentality. Totally agree. It's not like an MVP is never the right thing to do, but what did we base it on? Did we just base it on an idea, a hypothesis, ripping off a competitor, or something we think is cool? Or did we really do our research first and we really understand what problem we can solve, and it's a real problem that we didn't fake validate? So there's a lot of moving pieces here that unfortunately point to risk. The risk of not getting this right because we just rushed into the whole MVP idea of just work with an idea, get it out there, and see what people think. You can do that, but I feel like the Lean Startup book has been out long enough where we can see that very often it doesn't work. If we're still seeing over 90% failure rates for startups, for new product launches, for MVPs, for experiments, for A/B tests, maybe it's time to say this method doesn't really work very well or very often. And I think that's an important but tough conversation to have. Let's have that conversation. I'd like to see us doing better. And guess what? Your customers want better. So, on that note, taking a quick look at the calendar, looks like our next show is going to be Friday's Critical Thinking stream, which we will hold on our other YouTube channel, Delta CX. Hope to see you there. And then after that, we're doing a big webinar next week. You'll definitely want to come back. It's a two-parter, Monday and Wednesday, and it's going to be in workshop format, even though it's totally free. And so Monday and Wednesday, make sure you're joining us for, I'm having trouble pressing on my button. I'm calling it From Open Questions to Planning Research. And we're going to talk about the knowledge quadrant and how we go from that to planning research, which is also going to help us create immediate research value. Ana Lucia says, we have so much we can spend money on when we're working in a company. I don't know, people, taxes, rewards, better R&D. I always vote for better R&D, but you do have to pay your people and your taxes too. So it's a little bit of everything. So with that, I'm going to flame us out of here, and I look forward to seeing people in Friday Critical Thinking, but really I can't wait to see everybody back here Monday. So it's going to be late, one of our last few late ones, then before we go back to our old time. I hope people, Ana Lucia says, I hope people realize it's a waste of money doing an MVP without research. I think a lot of people don't realize that. I think they think that they're following the methods that say, put something out there, failing is cool, fail fast, try another idea, fail again. When we tell each other that failure is good, it's cool, everybody's failing, high failure rates are normal, then why be better? But once we start caring about quality, caring about the customer experience, and realizing that while failure isn't the worst thing, it's not the best thing. It's not our goal. Our goal is success, and I think we've forgotten about that. So I hope everybody watching this channel and all of their projects and work will be aiming for success. With that, I will flame us out of here, and I hope to catch everybody, especially next Monday and Wednesday, for our two-part free workshop live on the CXCC YouTube channel and also on LinkedIn. It's going to be audience participation, so get ready to join in. Yeah, caring is the key word. Yep, you've got accountability is the key word, quality is the key word, a lot of this. There's a lot of keywords here. Thanks again, everybody. Thanks for joining live or watching the YouTube video later, and I will catch everybody soon. Have a good day.